Our scripture reading is from the second chapter of John. 3 days later, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, was there. Jesus and his disciples had likewise been invited to the celebration. At a certain point, the wine ran out, and Jesus' mother told him, "They have no wine." Jesus replied, "Mother, what does that have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." She instructed those waiting on tables, "Do whatever he tells you." As prescribed for Jewish ceremonial washings, there were 6 stone water jars on hand, each one holding between 15 and 25 gallons. "Fill those jars with water," Jesus said, and the servers filled them to the brim. "Now," said Jesus, "draw some out and take it to the caterer." They did as they were instructed. The caterer tasted the water, which had been turned into wine, without knowing where it had come from. The only ones who knew were those who were waiting on tables, since they had drawn the water. The caterer called the bride and groom over and remarked, "People usually serve the best wine first. Then, when the guests have been drinking a while, a lesser vintage is served. What you've done is keep the best wine until now." Jesus performed this, his first of his signs at Cana in Galilee. In this way, he revealed his glory, and the disciples believed in him. After this, Jesus went down to Capernaum with his mother, brothers and sisters, and disciples. They stayed there a few days. Ancient words for our present day consideration.
I think I've mentioned before something that happened back when I was in school, long time ago. My school went on a field trip to a museum, and what we were looking at was like Christian art in the early Americas. My dad is an artist, so it was like having a knife in my heart because the colors were so dull. The people never studied perspective, just dead. The eyes didn't follow you when you walked by. And they've never studied anatomy, so everybody in the pictures looked like they'd just come out of a tragic car crash, with like very strange skeletal features. And I have to confess that I snuck away from the group, bad boy, because I saw a room full of hieroglyphs, Egyptian hieroglyphs. And the hair on my arm rose. We have a picture of, but imagine an entire room with hieroglyphs all around you, 100 times more than this. And even though I didn't understand why, I knew that those pictures were communicating something. I felt this kind of throbbing sense of life behind them. And I was only later to realize that a lot of the hieroglyphic, the vocabulary for hieroglyphic arts, where you're putting things in pictures, is that they're talking about something behind the pictures. So when you have a picture of an animal with a person, animal head, person body, they weren't saying there's really somebody that looked like that. They're talking about that invisible something that links us to animals. The web of life, that thread. What is it that weaves us together with plants and animals? And you feel it when it's reduced to a picture. But you can also realize these are human faces put on natural phenomena. You don't have to believe they're magical beings making everything happen. I sometimes think about maybe becoming a Christian meteorologist, where I'll give a weather report and say whose fault it is there's a storm. Because there's a whole cottage industry of saying this earthquake happened because of those people over there. This hurricane was meant to punish. And it's called all ridiculous, right? If hurricanes come from having too many gay people, then what does a drought get caused from? You got too many heterosexuals. Something really bad happens when you take religion literally, when you don't realize it's poetry about something that transcends what we can understand. If you could put it in understandable terms, you wouldn't need religion in the first place. You just describe what's there. Religion is about reconnecting all the different pieces of your life, connecting the dots in a way that at least makes enough sense where you can live your life meaningfully. If you think about the stories you were taught as a child, and you kind of try to measure how helpful it has been to understand those stories literally, I think you'll get my point that we need to go deeper, we need to do better. Today we're looking at a story that's very inspirational. Could we move this slide? There we go. It's Party Jesus. If you take this story literally, Jesus and his mother go to a party. The mother points out that there's not enough wine, which is very strange for Christians who believe that drinking is evil. I mean, Jesus would have said, hey, no way, Mom. I'll make milk, but that's it. Draw the line there. Maybe grape soda, but strawberry Shasta. So she says, they're out of wine. And then he says, woman, what does that got to do with me? That's a little harsh. A little harsh. And then he says, my time has not come. And then he does it anyway. Kind of strange, just kind of a strange story. So he turns water into wine. People got to choose whether white or red, I guess. But what kind of a story is that? What does that teach you about your life? When we talk about the New Testament, which, by the way, is a very strange term for something that's 2,000 years old, right? To call something new, if it's new, it's because you've restored it. If you're taking it in the same sense that it was 2,000 years ago, that's old. But we're turning mystical poetry into archaeology. We're talking about things that supposedly happened 2,000 years ago. And you may want to care, but you don't. Unless the preacher makes you afraid that if you don't believe this, you're going to be drugged to hell. If the preacher drones on enough, you say, well, okay, maybe that's not so bad. I mean, can you imagine if heaven is an eternal sermon? I believe that this is a story that's a reworking of an earlier myth that everybody who heard the story would have already known. And it comes from the religion of Dionysus, who was sometimes called the god of wine, but that's like a really superficial understanding. Let's shift to, this is baby Dionysus. Cute little kid. Zeus was the head of the gods. And there was a woman who wanted to get to know him personally. And she wanted to, how do you say it, have a date. But she wanted him to reveal himself in his native form, in his original form, which she didn't realize is lightning. Now that's a myth, right? Zeus means life. Zeus. It almost sounds like that kind of vibrating, vital force. So unfortunately, she wasn't there after their date. And so the little baby that came out of that, Zeus put in his thigh, which apparently works. Again, if it's a poem, it's great. But when they tried to bathe the little baby after it was born, they put it in a bathtub, and the water turned to wine in the story. Now, when John is going to tell the story 500 years later of Jesus turning water into wine, the first place his listeners are going to go is this story. Because these stories were all over the Mediterranean. So what we're going to do today is look and see what was John trying to do in the poetry. And why that's important is because if you don't want your religion to be something that's dead, that you just pretend you believe in because you're afraid of hell, if you want something that illumines your life now, then you have to realize it's not about the poem, it's about you and your life. Jesus is a symbol of your highest self. There was a person named Jesus, most likely, taught wonderful things, did wonderful things, but that's not what John is trying to recapture. John wants you to understand the power of the message. John wants you to experience awakening to who you are in the cosmic sense, in the sense of the entire web of life, how you're interconnected with everything. So we're going to look at the story again, knowing now what John's listeners do. And we're going to kind of walk through the story. Now, I want to start by reading Euripides describing a story. Now, this is not something you're going to be able to unhear. So if you want to believe in Christianity literally, I suggest you step out and get coffee for a moment. Because I don't think there's any way you can know this and believe that that kind of simplistic traditional Christianity is what John had in mind. But this is Euripides. It's 500 years before the story that we just read. Two are the forces most precious to humankind. The first is Demeter, the goddess. That's the mother, right? As Dionysus is going around, he's going with his mother. His mother represents the earth, right? In these stories, in the original stories, the role being played by Mary represents the goddess, the earth mother. It's really weird to have a God who doesn't have a date, to have a bachelor God. We got three bachelor gods, which is very, very strange, right? So he goes, the first is Demeter, the goddess. She is the earth, or any name you wish to call her. See, that's good mythology. You get to define your own terms. She is the earth, or any name you wish to call her, and she sustains humanity with solid food. Now, I don't know if Euripides thinks there's really somebody somewhere named Demeter. But what he's saying is life is like that. Life is kind of like that. When you're in tune with life, it's like it's feeding you, it's guiding you, it's nurturing you. Next came Dionysus, son of the Virgin. So they have a virgin mother. Bringing the counterpart to bread, which is wine, and the blessing of life's flowing juices. Now listen to this. His blood, the blood of the grape, lightens the burden of our mortal misery. Though himself a God, it is his blood we pour out to offer thanks to the gods, and through him we are blessed. Now, next week we're going to serve communion, and we'll be looking at some other roots of that. But can you imagine how different that would feel when they talk about the blood of Christ? If you knew it wasn't this morbid, brutal, physical description of the pain. Jesus died in pain, if the story is correct. Jesus was tortured. But the way the story is being told is transforming that suffering into something else. That's what art does. It transforms life. Let's go to another slide here. This is Dionysus giving himself a haircut. But you notice you can't really tell the difference between his hair and the grapes. In these mythic symbols, it's like an aspirin. It's supposed to dissolve into your experience, right? So this image of this person who's turning things into wine is really a symbol of something deeper. Deeper than grapes, deeper than wine. It's not about wine at all. It's about that euphoric sense, almost intoxicating sense of being fully aware. So his hair is kind of strange. He also, the story starts off talking about the third day. Whenever you see that, consider whether it's talking about the cosmos. Because on the third day is after the moon has disappeared and come back again. It's lining you up to the cosmos. Our story starts off on the third day this. The resurrection story, on the third day he rose again from the dead, like the moon. So realizing that you can't know what happened 2,000 years ago, and you don't have to pretend. It's talking about here and now. It's revealing to you the age-old story, the age-old song. So you don't have to go looking for it. It's happening through you right now. One of the best expressions of a kind of Dionysian joy of religion is the Ode to Joy that we sing at sometimes around Christmas. But it's that sense of finding the sacred everywhere, particularly in the ordinary. It's really exciting to believe in magic tricks, but think how that impoverishes your everyday moments. What if you thought the mystery was always there, manifest, and whenever you got still enough and in tune enough, it would always be there for you? It was never someplace else. It was never just a magic trick. It was an aspect of life itself. This is, I think, somebody who must have had an experience of this just blissful awareness that they're part of all of life, of the web of life. The song goes, all your works with joy surround you. Earth and heaven reflect your rays. This is talking about whatever the source is. Stars and planets sing around you, center of unbroken praise. Field and forest, vale and mountain, flowering meadow, ocean too, chanting bird and flowing fountain, call us to rejoice in you. What if you thought of every being as a word of God? And realize that wherever you are, you're hearing a symphony. That sometimes you have to slow down, you have to get still, but the music is always playing. So the first thing I think we're called to is this finding our roots in the earth. It's fine to believe any kind of magical thing or otherworldly thing that you want to, but your heart longs to be plugged into your source in the earth that you're going to experience each day. Then the second thing that I think is really important is where this miracle happens. The water is turned to wine in the purification jars of their religion. Remember, they believe some people are pure, some people are not pure. And you go through this ritual to cleanse yourself. So John places the Dionysian kind of trick in the purification jars of religion. Does that not imply that the purpose of religion is not to be righteous, but to be happy? And help other people be happy, to have that spill out. Isn't that a same definition of justice? Where you're not just punishing evil, you're helping people be their best self. This story calls us to be our authentic self. When you think of purity, what I was taught is that means being moralistic, being pure, don't make mistakes. But what if it means to be purely human? To be your authentic self. One of the things wine was supposed to do is you could test, I can't remember if it was Socrates or Plato that said, before you elect a ruler, you should always get them drunk first. Because the mask will fall away and they'll say what they really think. Now, I'm not recommending that. And you almost don't have to with our choices. But what if you're being asked to be an authentic human being? What if that's what purity means? To stop pretending to be more than you are. What if even your flaws and foibles are a part of this healing? We're so afraid of that part of ourselves. And one of the pictures is of Dionysus riding a fierce beast, either cheetah or a lion. That person hadn't studied a whole lot of biology, so who knows what that is. Could be a griffin. Have you ever thought about the fact that a whole lot of your consciousness is irrational? As much as we want to try to be purely rational beings, we are always mammals. And when we pretend to be more than that, we stop being able to listen to what's happening deep within us. Now, unfortunately, what Christianity did with that is say that's the devil. When there's a part of yourself you don't know, that you're not in control of, that's the devil. So you've got a bipolar theology, where you're just going to flip back and forth, flip back and forth. The truth is you're not good or evil. You're human. And it depends on the context and what's happening. But that's the only thing you can authentically be, is human. This is the way this Plutarch, talking about the religion of wine, he says, wine frees the soul of subservience, of fear and insecurity. It teaches people how to be truthful and candid with one another. It reveals that which was hidden. Now that's real bad advice if you're alcoholic. It's not really that true, but that mythology is about taking you to the threshold of a truth, of a realization. And you have to recognize it in your life as you live it. Jesus would not be this lover of humankind if the whole point was just to worship him. If he came and said, I want you to talk good about me from now on. I don't really care how your personal life goes, but come every Sunday and just say nice things about me. And I promise not to put you in a furnace when you die. What a horrific religion many people try to live out. What if it's a call to who we really are? not just as human beings, but as the web of life, as this kind of cosmic flow of things. When I was a kid, another thing that happened was that Alan Watts got a radio show that was actually played in Dallas, Texas. And little Jimmy was sitting there after being indoctrinated in Sunday school, and here's things like this. You yourself are the eternal energy which appears as this universe. You didn't come into this world, you came out of it, like a wave from the ocean. How different it is when we realize we are expressions of nature. We are not put on nature. Maybe we might save ourselves and the species on the planet if we realized who we really are. The last point that I get from this, and feel free to be smarter than me and get more out of it, is that the whole story is about the transformation of pain into art. I mentioned the blood thing. When you were taught about the crucifixion of Jesus and only the blood of Jesus and all that kind of stuff, what if you had thought of the blood of the grape? Let me read a couple of quotes from Euripides about Dionysus. He says, when his blood bursts from the grape and flows across the tables laid in his honor, diffused with our blood, he gently, gradually wraps us in shadows of ivy-cool sleep. And again, the thing I read a few moments ago, that Dionysus, son of a virgin, bringing the counterpart to bread, wine, and blessing of life's flowing juices, his blood, the blood of the grape, lightens the burden of our mortal misery. Though himself a God, it is his blood we pour out to offer thanks to the gods, and through him we are blessed. What if when Jesus was facing his death, or when his disciples remembered his death, and the people that had been traumatized by that story of an execution of their spiritual teacher was then framed in the mantle of Dionysus? That Jesus is coming from a deeper place than Rome will ever know. And despite their best efforts to rob him of hope, even that pain will be transformed into something beautiful, into something noble, into something that will be a gift for all people. Many years ago, I went into a room that was filled with hieroglyphs. And I never looked at religion the same again. I don't care what happened 2,000 years ago. I refuse to be a coward and live my life in fear of a hell that somebody may just made up. I refuse to run ahead of my human family to try to get into lodgings in the sky that somebody else may have made up. Instead, I think what John is trying to give us, the same gift Dionysus was trying to give, is the gift of joy. It's the gift of love. It's the gift of comfort. Religion should help us feel our roots into the earth. You are as natural as a tree. But when you don't know that, and when you don't feel that, it's very hard to honor your home. Human beings have built 1 million temples. God has only built one, and that's nature. And so religion should call us to that sacred temple. And it should give us permission to be what we are. You shouldn't have to live your life behind a mask when who you truly are authentically is the greatest gift you can give anyone. And then finally to realize that whatever happens to you is not the last word. You can transform everything into art, into beauty, into joy. I want to close with Ode to Joy again, which again might as well have been written by Dionysius. My belief is that the early writers were synthesizing truths from all over the world. And if you don't believe me, go to a library that has the early church writings. You probably won't be able to find it. Maybe go to a seminary. They won't read them there, but they've got them. And what's the point of reading the early church, right? It's Luther and Calvin got it all. But just look at the index and you see religions all over the world. You see philosophers. These were really smart people. And they were universalists, I believe. And we can be too. Let me close now with the hymn we'll be singing in a few minutes. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, God of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before you, opening to the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the doubt, the pain of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the light of day. We will take a moment now for you to contemplate on how you would understand these words.